So today's video is about multiplying fractions. So how do you multiply fractions? So you can just remember the words to this rhyme. Multiplying fractions, no big problem. Top times top over bottom times bottom. Bottom times bottom. Multiplying fractions, no big problem. Top times top over bottom times bottom. So how is multiplying mixed numbers different from multiplying fractions? Well, with a mixed number, you have to change all mixed numbers to improper fractions first before you multiply. Because remember, in the rhyme it says top times top over bottom times bottom. So you got to make sure that each one of your fractions only has a top and a bottom. So if it's a mixed number, you have to change it to an improper fraction first. What about if it's a whole number? What should you do if you have a whole number? Well, you're going to place a 1 on the bottom, turning the whole number into a fraction. So simplifying, when you simplify fractions, you have the option to either simplify the diagonals before you multiply or to simplify at the end. Either gives you the same answer. So when you're simplifying the diagonals before you multiply, you basically would look at the diagonals, look at the numbers diagonal from each other, and see if you can simplify them. And you would simplify them the same way you would simplify a fraction, by finding what number can go into both numbers. So 3 and 15 can both be divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 would give you 1, so I would replace the 3 with a 1. And then 15 divided by 3 would give you 5, so I'll replace the 15 with a 5. Then if I look at this diagonal, 12 and 4 can both be divided by 4. So then I divide 4 by 4 and I replace the 4 with a 1. And then I divide 12 by 4 and I replace the 12 with a 3. Then I can do top times top over bottom times bottom. And so again, now my top two numbers, instead of being 3 and 12, are now 1 and 3. So I have 1 times 3. And then my two bottom numbers are now 1 and 5. So I have 1 times 5. So then when I do top times top over bottom times bottom, I'm going to do 1 times 3 over 1 times 5, which gives me an answer of 3/5. And then we always want to check to see if our answer is in simplest form. So the next thing that you can do is you can actually multiply first and then simplify your answer after you multiply. So you wouldn't do anything with the diagonals. You would simply do top times top over bottom times bottom. So I'm going to do 3 times 12 over 4 times 15. And that gives me 36 over 60. And 36 and 60 can both be divided by 12. So 36 divided by 12 gives me 3, and then 60 divided by 12 gives me 5. So again, we end up with 3/5. So whether you simplify the diagonals before you multiply, or if you just wait and simplify your answer, you still come up with the same answer. So let's look at some examples. We want to find the product of 4/9 and 3/8. So this side, we're going to be simplifying the diagonals first. Then on this side, we're going to simplify after we get our answer, just so that you can see how whether you do it either way, you can still get the same answer. So the first thing we want to do is set up our problem. So we have 4/9 times 3/8. So I want to look at my diagonals and I want to see, can the diagonals be simplified? So I look at 4 and 8 and they can both be divided by 4. So then 4 divided by 4 will give me 1 and 8 divided by 4 will give me 2. Then I look at 9. So I look at the other diagonal. And 9 and 3 can both be divided by 3. So then 9 divided by 3 will give me 3. And 3 divided by 3 will give me 1. So then after that, I'm going to do top times top over bottom times bottom. Now my two top numbers are 1 and 1. And my two bottom numbers are 3 and 2. And that gives me a final answer of 1/6. And again, I need to check to see is my answer in its simplest form. The other option is that you can actually multiply the numbers first and then simplify your answer. So instead of doing anything with the diagonals, I'll just do top times top over bottom times bottom. So I'm going to do 4 times 3 over 9 times 8. Well, 4 times 3 gives me 12, and then 9 times 8 gives me 72. And 12 and 72 can be simplified. They can both be divided by 12. So if I divide 12 by 12, that gives me 1. If I divide 72 by 12, that gives me 6. So as you can see, whether we choose to simplify the diagonals before we multiply or whether we choose to simplify our answer after we multiply, we still came up with a final answer of 1/6. So again, let's do another example. This time we're multiplying a whole number by a fraction. So we have 6 times 5/12. Well, the first thing you want to recognize is what to do with the whole number. So when you have a whole number, you need to put a 1 underneath it. because it needs to have a top and a bottom so that you can do top times top over bottom times bottom. Then I look at my diagonals to see, can they be simplified? So when I look at this diagonal, I do see that 6 and 12 can be simplified. They can both be divided by 6. So 6 divided by 6 will give me 1, and then 12 divided by 6 will give me 2. I look at 5 and 1. Well, 5 and 1 is already simplified. It's in its simplest form, so I don't need to do anything to this diagonal. So now I'm going to do top times top over bottom times bottom. So now I'm doing 1 times 5 over 1 times 2, and then that gives me 5 over 2. Well, 5 over 2 is what we would call an improper fraction, and you do not leave your answer as an improper fraction. So in order to change it to a mixed number, you do have to divide. So that means you have to set up your division problem. And we're first going to see, well, how many times can 2 go into 5? Well, it goes into 5 2 times. Then we subtract 4 and we get 1. And so then remember, the remainder 1 is actually going to become the numerator of the fraction. And then we put it over the same denominator we started with, which is 2. So what that means is that 5 over 2 would equal 2 1/2. And again, we have to make sure that our fractions are in simplest form. So now the other option is that we can simplify the answer after we multiply. Again, we can be doing top times top over bottom times bottom without simplifying the diagonals. And that would give me 30 over 12. Well, 30 over 12 can be simplified. I can divide them both by 6. And again, it gives me 5 over 2 because 30 divided by 6 gives me 5. And then 12 divided by 6 gives me 2. And then once again, I cannot leave my answer as an improper fraction. So I do want to go ahead and do the division just like I did before. And then once again, this tells me that 5 over 2 would equal 2 1/2. So again, we ended up with the same answer, a final answer of 2 1/2. So now we want to find the product of mixed numbers. And remember, with mixed numbers, you have to change them to improper fractions first. So when I'm looking at my two mixed numbers, the first thing I have to do is make sure that they are improper fractions. So then remember, you're going to make the circle. 4 times 1 plus 1 more. So 4 times 1 gives us 4. We add 1 more, and that gives us 5. And then we put it over the same denominator we started with. And then again, we have 5 times 2 gives us 10, plus 2 more gives us 12. And then we put that over the same denominator. Now that we've changed them to improper fractions, now we can go ahead and simplify the diagonals. So I know that 5 can be divided by 5. So both of these 5s can be divided by 5, which would give me 1. And then I can look at my other diagonal. Sorry about that, guys. Trying to find my loop. There we go. And 4 and 12 can both be divided by 4. Well, 4 divided by 4 gives you 1, and then 12 divided by 4 gives you 3. So then again, you end up with top times top over bottom times bottom. So I end up with 1 times 3 over 1 times 1, which equals 3 over 1. And then 3 and 1 can go into 3 times, so then my answer is just 3 wholes. So then my final answer is that 1 and 1/4 times 2 and 2/5 would equal 3 wholes. So just remember, when you're multiplying fractions, it's no big problem. Top times top over bottom times bottom. Don't forget to teach the tiger something you learned in the video today.